Welcome back. This is Leah Piper, your Tantra expert, and I'm here with Dr. Willow Brown, your Taoist expert at the Sex Reimagined Podcast.
Yes, and today we are interviewing a really special guest, Amy Taylor, who was in the sexuality industry as a sex worker, as an escort for many years, and she has quite a story to share with you. She also became a commercially licensed pilot in that interim and got into not only molecular biology, but also oil. So she's
She was
just
in the oil business.
fascinating. Yeah. I mean,
She was in the real estate business. She was in the escort business. She's in the
love
modeling
this
business.
woman. Yeah, she's fascinating.
Yeah, very accomplished. And she has some wild stories to tell about her adventures, misadventures, I would probably say. So please
tune in, turn on, and fall in love with Amy Taylor.
Welcome to the Sex Reimagined Podcast, where sex is shame-free and pleasure-forward. Let's get into the show.
Amy Taylor, welcome to the show.
We're so excited to have you and to dive into so many amazing, juicy topics that we have not talked about yet on this Sex Reimagined podcast.
It's nice to see you guys. How you doing?
Good. You know, one of the things I know you're passionate about and do a lot of work around, advocacy work around, is sex work and the legal ramifications, the social ramifications, the judgment, the purity culture, and then, you know, the freedom that we should have with our bodies and the choices and the things that actually serve our culture that sex work participates in and contributes with.
Yeah.
So let's just dive in. How did you get started with your advocacy?
Yeah, so thank you for saying that. And I'm not faulting anybody whose lived experience is different than my own. Much like any other massive multi-billion-dollar industry, it is not a monolith. And I understand that I lived at the very privileged end of things. There is much I don't know, but it is my belief that the bodily autonomy issue is a major one. I don't think the state should own our bodies. I just don't, or a church or any other entity. I think autonomy is a really big deal. You give that up, it's a slippery slope. And I also believe that you cannot be driven by a desire to spite, punish, and criminalize your way out of things that are full of problems. That's never worked anytime we've tried that in human history. I think when you lead with kindness, compassion, and love, you can actually do better to minimize things that are problematic. But it takes some better logic. The instinct is sort of this base animal instinct to spite and punish your way out of things, and that usually fail, even if in the moment it feels good to those in power.
Right.
It doesn't work. So, and I've seen that firsthand. I have 2 decades of experience on and off part-time in sex work. I've been a high-end companion. How did that start for me? Poverty. High-end poverty. So the two things can be true at the same time.
High-end poverty. Wow.
I know. So you can be classy and broke.
Okay.
It's true. So,
okay.
I'm a professor's kid. My family had lots of class. You spoke languages, would go to Paris, but we'd go to Paris and stay in a relative's house in the 18th arrondissement, which is like the hood. So we weren't going to the Four Seasons Georges V, right? We were, we were flying with like 4 connections to go see my grandmother who, couldn't get citizenship in the U.S. So you can seem, we had a lot of class, but no cash. We stayed in Holiday Inns. We weren't. And so I went to Berkeley undergrad because I was a smart, nerdy kid. They gave me money to go there. But I studied molecular biology. I get out. I work in biotech at this place in Marin County, California, north of the Golden Gate Bridge. I was spending money to work there, trying to live in the Bay Area. So like I say, fancy poverty. Everyone was like, ooh, you're a scientist. Yes, I was. It was true. I was a bench researcher, just the bachelor's degree level. And I was making negative money. And I was not living like I do now as an older lady in my 40s. I was living in a studio in Oakland, and I still couldn't afford groceries. I couldn't afford the gas in my car. And I did have the fancy job they tell you to get. I got a STEM degree with honors. So I had a rich boyfriend, a doctor. He paid for all of our trips and stuff that benefited him, but he actually wouldn't even pay for like the clothes. He'd be like, let's go to Tahiti for a week. Yeah, sure. Yes. Great. I like that. Duh. And I loved him. But then I was like trying to keep up with him, and even just paying for a week's worth of bikinis, I didn't have it. You don't have it when you're 21. in my sorority house, I moved into a sorority. Actually, it was cheaper than the apartments at Berkeley. So I didn't, if people think sororities are always sort of fancy rich girls, we were not. I was not. It was actually less expensive because you're living in a room with 3 girls and, sharing everything. So again, fancy poverty. It looks like don't believe everything you look about people, right? That bag might be knockoff. That you don't know.
Yeah. I feel
And
like I grew up, like my parents pretended to be middle class. It was like we were pretending while they were fighting around having enough money for the groceries. Sort of like I can really relate to what you're saying. So how did
and no one wants to seem like trash because there's so much social chit and benefit in pretending to have a little class, right? I do speak French. That has made me a lot of money.
okay.
I know which fork to use, but it's not like we never even were allowed to order steak. I knew what we could afford and couldn't, but I know how to cut. I mean, if I have to. So right. No one pretends to be lower than they are on the social scale because of the cost of behaving that way. Or maybe
so did that give you a leg up when you became a companion, quote unquote?
Yeah, of course it did, because I seemed more presentable than I was. I speak this way because I'm a professor's kid. My dad speaks 6 languages. Like I said, we never had any money, but he had a lot of class. He's a smart dude and he's a classy guy. But he was a refugee my dad was born in Budapest in 1941. Bad place to be a Jew. Nazis on one side, Soviets on the other. So he was a refugee. The Parisians took a lot of them in, but never gave them citizenship. He was undocumented and treated like shit accordingly, just like we do now to the mostly Latino ones. He was part of the wave of Eastern European ones in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. He was allowed to come to America because he was a science person and we wanted his skills. But he was again given papers till he married my mother. And my mother was an Air Force brat. Again, social clout, right? But no money.
Right.
So I go to Berkeley. I hear from this sorority sister she was a Cal cheerleader. She's gorgeous, like the perfect look, blonde, thin, what really sells. And her parents got divorced and her dad was really fucking her mom over in the fight. And she had to move out of our sorority house. She couldn't afford even to live there. And then we both were there one summer. I was taking a summer class to knock down some units to save money and be in college less long, right? And working some part-time. I worked at a clothing store. It sucked. And she stayed there one summer and she got a car. Not a great one, but I was like, oh, is your dad being better to you guys now? And she confessed that she was working as a high-end escort. And I was like, dude, what's that?
Right.
Tells me she goes across the Bay Bridge and goes out to dinner with some tech nerd with a lot of money and comes home with a few $1,000s. And I was like, wait, I'm doing that with this doctor I'm dating and I'm spending money on the dress that he'll pay for dinner, but he won't pay for my dress. And I'm going broke here. You could get paid to do that?
Yeah.
And she laughed and said, sometimes there's physical stuff. Most of the time there isn't. They were all very nice, just kind of nerdy and rich and busy and bored. And so my first impression of it was probably overly positive, right? I thought that's what all of it was like, dude, you're just, and she was like, yeah, they're not going to commit to you. They're not going to marry you. I was like, dude, fine with me. I don't want to do that. I want to go to graduate school and live my life. How
old were you?
Yeah, I was just going to say, what year was this?
I was 19. She was 20. She was 1 year ahead of me. Maybe I was 20 and she was 21. I started college a year early at 17. It was my sophomore summer. So I would have been 19, almost 20. So I filed that away in the back of my head, right? Oh my God, I didn't know this was a thing. Right. And you're a pretty young girl.
Better than a clothing store, huh?
What? And again, didn't need to do it because I had the rich boyfriend, but as that fell apart and I worked in biotech after college, as I told you, was pretty mediocre at it, hated it, wasn't making enough money. He was eyeballing me as I'm going to marry you and I want to have kids soon because he was 10 years older. I was going to move to this small town inland of the Bay Area and be a doctor's wife. And it would have been perfect. And that's what women did for all of history, right?
Right.
I didn't want to. I
had it all secured and locked in and locked down.
And I was
didn't want it.
Another path was calling you. Yeah.
I don't know. Sure, many people think I'm an idiot. And, he did just fine without old lady. He married, he had kids. He's fine.
He's fine.
He replaced me real quick. But I wanted other things. I wanted to live in a big city. I wanted to, I had gotten into LA undergrad, but they didn't give me as much of a scholarship, so I didn't go. I really wanted to live in LA. Palm trees, sunshine, pretty people. It was about 500 miles away. You go down sometimes to Disneyland as a lot of people look
Did you
at
go?
I did. I went and got my MBA.
Nice.
I totally pivoted. I was like, I need other skills because all I'm trained to do is biotech. I hate it and it doesn't pay well enough. And I don't want to go get a PhD in it and follow my father's track. So I do an MBA. We don't make it. He and I was going to go 2 years and then come back and we'd get married and we break up. He sleeps with somebody else. Honestly, that was my ticket out. It was like, oh, you cheated. Sorry. Bye.
Right.
And I was sad at the moment. I did love him. But the problem was he yanked the financial rug out from underneath me when we broke up because he was the one funding my MBA.
Your MBA?
That he reluctantly agreed that I should get. He didn't really want me to do anything.
He didn't want you empowered.
I mean, not really.
But he wanted a wife and he wanted a mother. So
yeah, and he did get that.
That's what I mean. There's nothing wrong with his desire. I don't think he wanted her disempowered. That doesn't sound like he was trying to keep you down. He was just clear about what he was after.
And honestly, me having an MBA, there would have been nepotism. He worked in academic medicine. He would have made sure I got a job, and the MBA probably would have helped. I could have gone into the business of science or writing or something else besides being at the bench, lonely, killing mice all day, which is what I was doing. I was a real mouse murderer, and it got to be done. We all take medicine, but it was hard on my soul. Honestly, it was really hard to kill so many animals all the time.
Okay, so you get to LA, and then how do you actually bridge into escort work?
He takes back my car. I'm in LA with negative income, right? Not only no income, but giant bills.
Bills.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, that thing Lisa told me about.
How did you actually start getting clients?
Well, I looked around on the internet, 2002.
Okay.
So, it was no smartphones yet, but when 2.0 was burgeoning, it was no longer like dial-up and all. It was better than that. And I called a couple agencies. They wouldn't hire me. They only hired like actresses and models. But one told me, she's like, you're clearly a romantic extrovert. You like dating. It's all true. I do. And you're super
Did you like sex?
Sure, of course.
At this age? Okay.
Yeah, and I had only had sex with this guy ever. That's the first
Oh,
one.
he was
wow.
first. Wow.
Not totally experienced.
I was very much ready to fuck some other people. And I fucked many more than I thought I would, but I'm honestly not sorry. It was fun. I had a great time. And everything. I have a sorority sister who was super hot, and I didn't fuck her when I had the chance. I wanted to do all these things. I wanted to go to gangbangs and orgies and all the things people do in their 20s and 30s and 40s and still. And I did. And I just wanted freedom and a full expression of a human life, including my sexuality. And I didn't really want commitment. I was kind of brokenhearted over the guy. So I was like, oh, freedom, a little income. I get to spread my wings sexually. Sounds like a win. And she told me, you could do this on your own. You don't need an agency. You're a pretty smart chick. And honestly, it ain't rocket science to set up shop and hang out your shingle. It's just a small one-person internet business. You get some photos and an ad and an email and a phone. It's not exactly,
Right. It's not that hard.
Company. So it's literally just dating. You set up a profile. It's exactly like dating, except you aren't marriage and the guys are richer and help you out, and they can leave anytime they want. But frankly, they do anyway, even if they're not paying you. So
right.
And so it was fun. I promptly met a billionaire who I saw for over a decade. I met a Hollywood agent who took me all over the world. I had a great time. And yes, I had a lot of sex with a lot of people and I had fun. I went to very fancy celebrity-laden swinger parties, not like abusive stuff like P. Diddy. Like, it was totally fun.
Yeah.
And it was great. I finished my degree. I got a job in oil. I learned to fly planes, which I still do. I've been able to be financially independent and even help support my family. And I've learned a lot. We can talk about it, but sex work has a lot to teach the shame-ridden world about sexual satisfaction and consent. And because the freedom of these, transactional relationships, there's a power differential, but there often is anyway in relationships for lots of reasons. Yeah. And ours, they empower sort of self-expression because people are kind of like, fuck it. We're not going to really have a real relationship anyway, so may as well be honest. And in a
there's sort of like more clear parameters and
there's a
roles.
container for it.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to like go get married and run away and have kids. And if you don't like each other, you can both replace each other. And the weird upside of that is that you can be more honest, which is funny and actually works out. Discovery and exploration. I've met a lot of people who didn't want to die having only done Missionary in the Dark.
Yeah.
What's
And
the downside of it for you?
Yeah,
And some
and
of
I'm
them-
also curious, like, if you
Sorry.
had other relationships during that time, like more personal
Yeah.
relationships as well. How did that
and
go?
they ended up a shit show every time. Perhaps possibly some of that was me not really wanting to leave sex work. When you're 1 foot in and 1 foot out, you get nowhere in life, right? Because you don't head in one direction with your full chest.
Mhm.
I look
Yeah,
back, I
interesting.
don't
Yeah.
know. It's hard to know what you were feeling at the time, and retroactively, you kind of rewrite history. So I don't know, but yes, I fell in love with a neighbor who was a baseball player because he was so fucking hot. And I'm a human being. And he did know. He knew what I did. I didn't lie to him. We thought we'd try to work it out, and I would ease out, and we'd be normal. Yeah, it totally failed.
Mm.
And he's fine now. He lives in the Pacific Northwest, and he's fine. And in
And
another,
are you fine?
it's a long time ago now. In another life, I would have married him and given it a go. And we tried, and it was tragic. We got pregnant. We had a miscarriage because
Mm.
I had a really traumatic stalker. So
Oh.
the bad side of sex work.
Yeah.
I had a pimp who wanted to make money off me. I refused. I told him to go to hell. He tried to murder me. That does happen in this world. I was
That's
very
a bad
naive.
side. Yeah.
Yeah, I was very naive not to think that people like that existed because I didn't come from the streets, and I thought that was just the stuff of movies. Nope,
Mhm.
they do exist.
Oh,
And
wow.
and me and my dumbass big mouth, I told the pimp to go to hell, which was a bad idea. 'Cause,
Mhm.
and
Was
he
he violent with you?
say again.
Was he violent, like in
Well, I
the
never met
relationship?
him. It was all online. No, I didn't know him.
Oh,
Which
oh.
he ran
So
a
explain
ski-
this, because this is I don't hear people talk about having pimps in the escort world. So I'd love for you to
Well,
dive into
he's-
that a little bit.
So it's an online version of the street thing. So he is still a part owner tangentially through a Grand Cayman company called Treehouse Park. They all put it in shells through Romania.
Right.
Launder money here and Bitcoin there.
Mm.
But it's called theeroticreview.com. And his name is David Elms. He goes by David Nguyen now, trying to hide from his past. And he wanted all of us to openly sell sex, which I, first of all, refused to do because most of the people don't want sex. And when I did have sex, it was never because of money. It was who I wanted to.
Yeah, it's because
right.
you wanted to.
Totally.
And that's the only way it's legal. And he wanted you to like reduce it to sex acts for money, which I found isn't what a lot of people want.
Mm-hmm.
And where they do, it's fine, but that's not really the business I was in. And I'm not saying I'm better than anybody, but it wasn't. I was going to the skiing for a week with people, and it was not the same thing. But he wanted you to sell sex. He wanted you to demand your clients to join his site, write reviews, which he would charge other people to read. He had a searchable database of like men could plug in, I want this sex act in this area code with this color hair and this height.
Right.
And boom, here's your results of who you can hire. And
Yeah.
actually, for a pimp, it's kind of genius. He was a very good computer coder, and
Yeah.
he built this searchable database of prostitutes.
Okay.
Which, and I didn't want to be part of that. Not only is that illegal, which, one wants to avoid crimes.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to be so reductionist. I didn't want people meeting me because of sex for money, because I don't see them as just a wallet. And I didn't want people who saw me as just a set of holes.
Right.
That's a fine business. Go to the brothels. Do you? I didn't want to be. So when I told David Elms, I'm not going to be part of the erotic review, I'm not going to tell my client, I don't want anything to do with you and your world, and fuck off.
Yeah.
He unfortunately lived near me in Los Angeles. That was bad luck. And he became more and more obsessed. So what he did was he bought my birth name, the name on my passport and driver's license.
Oh, like the URL?
Yes,
Will you
and
say
he
that?
built a
Yeah.
copy of my amytaylor.com website, and he changed the text to out me, my address, my family,
Wow.
say some very
Sweet.
odd lies.
That must have been hell to go through that.
Ruining my life. I lost my job. I lost the baseball boyfriend. I miscarried my unborn son at 17 weeks, who I hope I
Oh,
can
that
meet
must
someday.
have been a fucked up time.
Um,
How old were you then? Were you in your 20s?
That was 2009. So also the Great Recession was happening. That was fun too. We were hoping-
Right.
Yeah,
The
good
real
time.
estate crash.
Right.
Yeah.
My family didn't speak to me for 2 years.
Oh my God.
There was no business to be done either in oil that I had been working in after my MBA or in escorting or modeling. There was just nothing to do. So I
Mhm.
went to Arizona and I just flew every day. I added my commercial multi-engine and my instructor and instructor multi licenses, and I just flew because it was a way to.
You got good
Your
at
life
flying.
is fascinating.
I
I'm sort
know.
of riveted
gotta be-
about these chapters. Like you can really see like There was this chapter. There was a Bay Area chapter. Then there was the LA chapter, and then there was the Pimp Gone Wrong chapter, and then there was the love affair with the baseball player chapter, and now there's the pilot chapter in Arizona.
Well, I had been playing for a hobby, and it becomes a I had made some money. We took the oil companies. They was very small. It was actually oil. It was a technology and oil company. We did some drilling, but mostly we did some of the primitive, like wireless communication off the, getting the data to the home base in Houston and LA. So anyway, we sold that. A company bought it. I didn't want to move to Houston and work for them. So I took some stock, bought some real estate. I made more money off that than I ever did off of sex work.
Wow.
Yeah, it was good timing. My boss did want to date me, but he gave up after asking. It was typical. I've always worked in fields full of men, science, and then aviation, and then oil, and then sex work. I think the male gaze has been some kind of odd theme in life. I've benefited from it, and I've also suffered at the hands of it. I think
Have friendships with men been very easy for you versus friendships with women? Has it been pretty balanced?
It's funny. When I was young, men were, always very predatory. They just want to fuck you. It's biology, and it's fine. It makes people. We need that drive. I don't hate the male sex.
Right.
And you're never going to get rid of it. So who cares if you hate it? It's literally the most important thing there is to make other people. So men are always going to want to fuck fertile women that are premenopausal, and that is normal. Right. Now, I just turned 48, and like my friendships with women are so much better because the women are not as threatened. And men now are sometimes like on the street in Manhattan, they're just nice to me, and they pet my dog and then they don't hit on me.
Yeah.
Will do. I'm good looking. Some men like older women, and I'm a good looking older woman. I still got a great body. And
well, yeah, you're gorgeous. So
Thanks.
I imagine you've been a magnet for male attention your whole life.
Yeah, it's less now because about half of men, or I'd have to think about the number, but there's a certain percentage of men who just want you younger. Yeah. And that's because they don't want to make people. And that's totally cool. Those men don't hit on me. But there is...
And young women are hot. I mean, you look at their little nubile bodies. It's understandable. Yeah. Better to celebrate it than to resent it. That's sort of my attitude.
I like it now. I can't wait for my old bog witch years. And I'm going to be like in my 70s on the Upper East Side with a bunch of tiny dogs and old lady friends. And I'm just going to go full bog witch, and it's going to be rad. I can't wait.
Yeah. So I kind of think like sex is wasted on the youth as compared to who I am in my later 40s.
Yeah, because they don't know what they're doing.
I'm more interested in sex than I ever was in my 20s. I'm more erotically inspired than I was when I was younger. I had so many more judgments and confusion and insecurities and body image stuff. It's really interesting to sort of watch the evolution of my own sexuality as I get older. And I often think, God, if only I had this when I was younger, I would have had a lot more fun when I was younger.
Well, I watched your stuff about your background and what you've been through, and I'm so sorry for a lot of it. I grew up with the opposite, no shame, Euro trash, liberal, Bay Area, California. And yet I think we all should let ourselves have all the chapters. My old lady chapter might be quite chaste because I've done a lot of fucking, and it's great.
Right.
You have the right to check out. I told you I've met a lot, 3 or 4 older men who lived in the South, Christian, conservative. They don't want to die without experiencing stuff, but they can't be free to be honest because they run businesses and they deal with people in their church. If they tell the truth, they'll be pariahed. And so I don't fault them for lying. I wish they didn't have to. There's no good solution. They've got kids.
I agree.
It is what it is. Yeah. Their lying does damage to us, but on the other hand, they got to survive too, right? You can't. And I don't think they could fix things in Jackson, Mississippi by being like, I love whores. I don't.
Yeah, that's probably not going to fix things.
Yeah, that's probably not the wisest banner to hold in that kind of culture. And I do have a lot of compassion for people who I see who feel like if they were really true to their deepest desires, it would blow up their life. It would hurt the people that they very much care about. And so they're in this conflict of like choosing some sort of inner truth versus, hurting their loved ones and it costing them not just money, but money's on the fucking table. And careers and relationships with their kids. I mean, it could be a real mess. And I hope for a world where we're not so divided, when people can be more liberated in what is inside of them that
Well,
wants to
I
see
feel like a lot
pleasure.
of people in our generation now too are just opening up like they're not getting divorced, but they're like, hey, let's just not be non-monogamous. Let's just open it up. And
Yeah.
some are even, not together, but they're still living in the same household. And, they're not going to unravel all that they've built together just because they're not sexually attracted to each other anymore and they don't want to
No,
do
but they're
that. There's
still
so many
attracted to pair
options.
bonding, right? It's like there's still this thing that we interweave with people that goes, I don't want this to end, and we're super siblings at this point. But we
Yeah.
share so much, especially bank accounts and family members.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Willow, that you're more connected to the people who are choosing non-monogamy, right? Which was a more conscious thing. I'm encountering people, especially in my work. I've had a few recent client students who are confessing that they wish they would have grown up in this previous in this newest generation where they could be more open about the desire to be with trans women. Like they love the idea of this feminine breast, this person that dresses up and feels like a woman but still has a cock. And it was really interesting to have 3 clients in a row confess this. And I'm the only person they've ever told this to. Like, I just find all of this so interesting, our deepest, darkest secrets around what we really want sexually. I imagine, Amy, that you were privy to a lot of secrets and things that people only admitted to you.
80% of clients I've known have wanted to have sex with a transgender person. One joked, he's like, it's like a threesome, but it's all in one because I get
Yeah.
They are
That's true.
very popular in sex work for a reason. They're I mean, the third gender, you go to Thailand or Fiji or many cultures have thought of them as like a magical thing.
Totally.
Yeah, like a
Whether they
unicorn.
had surgery or just lived a certain way, like we are ridiculous about binary. I guess Americans can only count to 2. It's red or blue. Oh, we can't count to more than 2? It's so dumb. It's so dumb.
That's hilarious. That's so
So
true.
when did you start doing advocacy work for sex workers? Tell us a little bit about your journey on that.
Yeah, well, when I got outed and I had nothing, my family came back after a couple of years. I lied to my family because I wanted them to not have to deal with it. And it was better when they didn't know. I hated lying. It was stressful for me, but it was better for them. They hate knowing. They love me, but it's very uncomfortable for them. They're glad that I'm in the sunset. They worry about me. My sister said, did you ever think that David Elms could have hurt us to get to you? And the truth is I had not thought of that. I had, and so it's done damage to them, but they love me in spite of my choices, which is a grace I don't deserve and can't repay. And I'm grateful. So we are a very tight family. He tried to destroy my family and he failed. And so when I was outed, it is what it is. I lost job in banking and I've cobbled together a life. Banks are trying to be better to us, but they get attacked by the government if they give us banking.
Right.
Sometimes they hurt. But Wells Fargo has tried to fight for us. They're San Francisco. They've been counterculture from the beginning of the gold rush era.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah,
Well,
interesting.
the case has shut us down. It's a nightmare for us. And housing, I'm very fortunate not to have to rent, but I've been kicked out of housing.
Wow.
Getting a job is hard. Also, when people find out, the boss just tries to fuck you because you're nothing but a whore to him forever. Even if you quit, even if you've had one client for a decade,
Right.
with longer relationships than many marriages,
Right.
It's something that you never escape. And so that's when I decided to do advocacy because I was like, I've paid the piper. I'm going to be branded with the scarlet letter forever. I might as well try to do some good so that if I can, and I don't know if I can, I thought the idea was I'm out. It sucks. I wish I wasn't. But if I can show that I'm a human and you probably know you guys know sex workers, but other people think they've never met one.
Right.
no,
Yes, they have.
They only think it's the person in the truck stop on meth. They don't know that chick in their yoga class or at Whole Foods.
Right.
And that most of them just do it for a while. And they also do other things. They're pilots. They work in oil. They are,
Yeah,
I thought the idea was if you could see me and hear me, it might make you think that you don't know everything. And it might, not you, but people would question what they think of us. And I know tens of thousands of sex workers, but they won't talk to you because they're not out of the closet.
Right.
And that's good. And I hope they never get outed.
Yeah,
But-
there's good reasons to not be,
Oh, I wish I could still hide.
Now, when you outed and you had this traumatic experience with David, did you go back into sex work, or did that stop for you?
Yes. So
It sounds like you got other jobs.
there wasn't really my clients. Everybody was broke. Our investments all went down, and then they hobbled back up. And yeah, when the baseball guy, he had a corporate job. He was retiring from baseball and getting into the corporate world, and we didn't make it. The miscarriage was so hard on us. He was scared of David Elms because he got letters in the mail, your girlfriend's a whore, and I'm going to tell everybody. He got scared of losing his job. He and his parents finding out what I had done, and so we didn't make it. And so we broke up. I'm once again lonely. I'm now able to be a flight instructor and fly cargo, 2 things I did at different times to just build airtime. And yes, a couple clients that I had known at this point for almost a decade were like, yeah, you want to go to Hawaii or you want to go to Europe, see a soccer game and go to the Christmas markets in Germany, and hey, extra income, why not?
Yeah,
And
right.
People I've known for years.
And they're friends now.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like,
I was like,
yeah.
why would I not? I'm just going to stay home. Everything sucks.
yeah.
And so, yeah, it was just at that point dating. It wasn't even at that point in my age and savings and income. It wasn't really about money, but hey, we all like money. I like food and shelter. So,
Yeah.
so yes, I did. I went back to it because I really didn't have civilian. And then once you're branded and all of Google knows, it turns out regular dating is pretty hard.
Oh.
But at what point do you tell a guy, hey, guess what? So I think I know thousands of retired escorts who've dated their clients. Many are married, many have kids. Some tried it and didn't make it, got divorced, just like regular relationships.
Right.
But I think it is kind of easier to date somebody who's either been a client or is otherwise non-judgmental, because so much of the world will simply not date somebody like me, no matter how nice I am. They won't date me.
And so now you're living in New York. What are you up to these days?
I do a lot of broadcasting and a lot of modeling. There's tons of opportunities for New York. I wanted to move here 20 years ago when I first, these rich clients would either fly you here or meet you here because everybody comes to New York. Many of them had homes around here or not. And I fell in love with it a long time ago, like everybody does. In a different way than LA palm trees and sunshine that I also had fallen in love with. I wanted to experience living here, and I knew if I didn't do it now, I never will, because my parents are aging and I will have to be back in California to help. I can't leave it all to my sister. She'll kill me.
Right.
And I can't just fuck off in New York and write checks, right? That's like the shitty sibling thing to do, which, is kind of what I've been doing. My mom had surgery last year and I paid for things, but my sister spent all the time, and I can't do that forever. It's awful. So I will have to be in California, Northern California somewhere again within a few years.
Yeah.
If I dip into my parents tonight, I would plan the move tomorrow.
Right.
So I didn't get to have kids. I didn't get to have a husband. I got my reputation ruined. Honestly, not sorry for any of it, but I was going to treat myself to the experience of being a New Yorker for a few years.
Nice.
So
every bit as fun as I thought it would be.
Yeah, that's great.
So what do you want now? Sorry, Willow.
Yeah. Where are you headed next?
I want my health to hold up. I've got the beginnings of some electrical heart problems, so I'll probably not be able to pass my class 1 for aviation, at which point I'll have to just do class 2 or 3 and fly for fun, not for pay. So that's coming, but hopefully not this year. EKGs, I got a doctor who I take a little half a propranolol and drink no coffee, and he could still print out a few pages of decent EKG to pass me for another 6 months. So as long as my health holds up, I'll fly. I'm adding my rotorcraft rating. I'm learning to fly helicopters, which is way harder than fixed wing.
Interesting.
The airspace in Manhattan is as insane as the roads and the ground.
Is that right?
Busy.
It's
Packed.
so crowded, and they're so quick here compared to Californians.
Yeah.
New Yorkers do not mess around, and I sort of love it. I wish I had moved here a long time ago. I wish I had. I winter elsewhere because the weather sucks in January, February. And I will just continue to be a dog mom and healthy, and I work out, and I'm a great neighbor, and I'm a cliche aunt to my niece and nephew.
What about love and romance for you in this chapter?
I date a little. It's not going well. But I think there's a lot of forms of love. I don't think love just means a man that you live with. My grandmother, my dad's mom, was a relatively famous photographer. She did war photography and photojournalism and animal rights photography. She was aggressively vegetarian. And her work is archived in one of the national museums in a country in Europe for our family because they can keep it temperature controlled. It was film back in those days,
Wow.
old digital. She lived to be 104. She just died a couple years ago. She never married anybody. My dad was the product of a boyfriend, so were his twin sisters. It was a long relationship, but I always liked her life. She had more friends than anybody. She had projects until she was like 101.
Wow.
She had fame and a little money, and she wasn't gay. She liked men, but she didn't center them. It was like one more part of her life if it was convenient or not. And I love men. I've enjoyed them. I still do, but when I get up in the morning, my dreams and goals, the first on the list is not, find me a man.
Right.
And that's probably because they're as is so arrogant, I'm sorry, but they're like flies. They're everywhere. If I want, I'd go outside and have a pulse.
Yeah.
I've gone outside in baggy clothes and no makeup and a winter beanie and I still get hit on. So like, you don't get air either,
Yeah. So with your advocacy work, I'm curious, like because there's a lot of range, right? Politically, there's a lot of things that need to change. Where are you focused on? What are you passionate about around what you're like fighting for or that's the right
so
word?
I'm a little too mercurial. I'm an entertainer, right? I'm a clown. So my sister's in politics, and there's some good legislators in very progressive California. It's always been the most compassionate state, and it has the muscle and power. It's it's a bigger economy than India.
Right.
So California will be the place that will drag, if it's possible, it will drag this country into a kinder future towards sex work, if that's ever possible. That's the only place they're really seriously talking about it and have the muscle to get it done. So she's in politics there. She stands up for us bravely. She's gotten some shit about it, but and there's some legislators in the Bay Area, one guy in San Jose in particular who's writing some bills that will get looked at. And it's a slog. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but we have models of countries and places. New Zealand, Belgium just gave them maternal leave, and in New Zealand they can sue their customers if they don't get paid. And meanwhile here they die in a ditch and nobody cares, right? So we know it can be done better because we have places it is. So it's not some mystery. It's like gun violence or health insurance. Healthcare, we know we can do better. It's the willingness to do better. And the problem, of course, is legislators are horrified by anybody who stands up and says that sex workers should be given legal status and rights and respect as is the case in other work. No one's willing to stick their neck out first. But I liken it to the battle that LGBTQ people had, that everyone was too chicken shit to say that gay people were just like us and just wanted love and rights and power of attorney when their spouse is in the hospital and all the other thing. And then once you reach a tipping point and it becomes more shameful to be an asshole,
right,
in everyone, the tide swings the other way.
That's right.
So the goal here is to humanize. The goal here is to be brave, to not be shut up. And there's a lot of women. There's a woman named Caitlin who has an off-Broadway show. There's Mistress Matisse in Seattle. There's Kristen D'Angelo, who won a Cannes Film Festival award for the movie American Courtesans. There's Maggie McNeil. She's a beast fighting for our rights. It's the tipping point. It has to become more shameful to believe that sex workers are throwaway people who deserve everything awful than to believe they have rights. And once you change the culture, then you can change the laws. I think it is getting harder for people to simply say that we're subhuman. I get hundreds of emails every week from people who watch my stuff and been like, wow, I still maybe don't like what you do, but you're a human being. I'm like, yeah. Hello.
Wow. Yeah.
So I'm not a legislator. I don't have that kind of power. I wish I'd gone to law school. We do have Kate Adamo is a great lobbyist that fights for us. We're of course not allowed to unionize because we're not a legitimized industry. But that would be great if we could form a union, have dues, hire, spend more on lobbying. But we're doing
some kind of organization, forming together.
Is amazing. They have chapters everywhere. That's sort of the best we have.
Say it again.
Sorry, SWOP, Sex Workers Outreach Project. And there's chapters in every city. You can folks, if you're watching this, you can Google swap. It's swap.org or swapusa.org. Just Google it. You'll find the one near you. They do great work. Swap Behind Bars helps women who've been incarcerated. And then there's a lot of messy, informal ways, like when my stalker came after me, the Phoenix Police Department helped me, even knowing they didn't love what I did, but they didn't think I should be killed.
Right.
And I got a stern lecture from them, but they saved my life. So, but I've also been arrested, and the cops in Orange County, California, messed up my life and gave me a criminal record that has prevented me from getting housing and jobs for the rest of my life. So messy.
Yeah.
Like,
Can I ask you about that?
Yeah, the third client, he was a cop.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, I was dumb. He didn't screen. He was really nice. He said he owned a scuba diving shop in Huntington Beach, California, and that wasn't true. And he was super nice. We had a great time until we didn't, and he was so gross. Tom Giffen. Hey, fuck you, Tom.
Fuck you, Tom.
How did you meet him?
Consulting now with his nice, cushy retirement. And look, I don't even think he believed in what he was doing, because as they're arresting me and telling me I'm in grad school, right? And they didn't believe I was until they found out, oh shit, she's really a grad student. And they offered me like a minimum wage cleaning job to rescue me from sex work. Yeah, but
Oh, Jesus.
Oh my God.
not gonna help me.
Now, how
Yeah.
did he
And
find
wanted
you?
me
Like,
to
how did
date
you
me.
guys meet?
We answered my ad and we talked twice on the phone and planned a date, and we had a lovely evening until they busted through the door and threw me on the floor and handcuffed me in my underpants.
Wow. So it was a sting
Oh,
operation.
Oh yeah, he was really cute. I was very much ready to have a nice date and maybe physical stuff. I'm horny, I'm human.
Yeah.
And he was nice. And yes, if he helped me out with grad school, that would be nice.
Yeah.
But he wanted me to date his rich brother in Newport Beach after that. He's like,
After the arrest?
I don't
Oh,
even know if
jeez.
that was a real person or if he was still lying, because he was such a
Oh
liar.
my God.
But if there was a rich
Oh.
brother, I was like, you're trying to pimp me to your brother? Like, what? No, thank you, sir. He was
Wow.
a full psycho, and he was very good. He arrested a lot of my colleagues because that dude should have gone to Hollywood and acted, because he was a full sociopath, like a fucking sociopath.
Wow.
Which is why he was so good at his job. He was a better actor than most I've seen on film.
Now, are
So-
you seeing police target sex workers still today? My understanding is that they're really only targeting you if they get a complaint. They're less looking for sex workers, more looking for Johns. What's your understanding of that these days?
I think it's like a speeding ticket. If you're speeding on the freeway and they get you, it's really not that personal. You're just the one they got. It's stochastic. It's just
Yeah.
luck of the draw. Now, we're pattern-seeking humans with our brains. We always like to look for patterns. I've known older women, younger women arrested, high end, low end. I don't see, in my over 20 years of experience, I haven't seen, but I'm not privy to I don't think there were complaints about me. I was brand new, and the only reason they got me was I was too dumb to know how to screen.
Right.
And frankly, the upside was it taught me a painful lesson. It taught me that people can lie. I didn't know that people would give you a fake name and a fake job, because I would have never, I came from a world in which when somebody told you who they were, that's who they were.
Right.
So, very naive, right? But it did teach me that people lie, and that probably saved my life later, right? Because forever after that, I did not trust, which was a tough lesson to learn. To not trust people. I think we all learn that in some way as we age. We get a little bruised and battered by life. And I think they're just doing their job. They're tasked with a mandate and it doesn't work. It doesn't get rid of sex work. In fact, you catch an expensive case and now you need another 25 grand. So the last thing you do is quit, right?
Right.
'Cause now you need all this money. I borrowed it from a client, and I did pay him back because it was important to me to pay him back. And it all got dismissed and stuff. He did some things he shouldn't have done physically. So there was but they expected contrition. They expected to slut shame you as a woman,
Well,
and you'd
yeah.
show up in court, and that you'd, want to, I don't know, find Jesus and be a virgin again, or whatever the fuck they want.
It's just so wild to me, like how very not far we have, how not far this industry has come since like the 1800s, the courtesans in did you guys ever watch Dangerous Beauty, the courtesan situation over in Italy, and just like how, not that much has really shifted or changed.
We don't like
It's
slutty
sad.
women. It's a form.
I feel like it's because of the power that a woman has, who's in her sexual power, who knows her. Shakti, who knows how to wield her sexual
Right. Who
energy.
celebrates pleasure.
It's just, it's
Well,
so
and
powerful.
chaste women think that you are giving away your power and that you would have more power as a woman if we all held
Suppressed.
sex from men and controlled them with it. That's what the sort of chaste, virginal, usually
Right.
women,
Right.
they actually think we are losing power.
Right.
I disagree.
Right.
But they think the power is in denying men sex and using it as a bargaining chip to get marriage, and then it's just sex work too. They get the
Right.
marriage,
Totally.
Transactional.
It's very
Yeah.
transactional. It just depends on what you. It's like where you place the value.
Yeah.
one
You know,
thing
even
For centuries,
before,
we place the value on this made up thing called virginity.
yeah, and before all of this sort of like patriarchy came to power, sexuality was it was such a sacred thing. It was a cleansing thing. Like actually people would have to go through sacred sexual rites before they got married so that they could be cleansed and purified.
Or so they could be
before-
good at it.
Yeah,
Wait,
both. Right.
No? And they would come back from war and they would have to visit the sexual temples, in order to cleanse, to be fit for society again, because
Yeah.
they just saw all this combat. I mean, can you imagine if we could love our warriors sexually back to wholeness so that they could be, safe again in their own minds?
Of course.
In the brutality that they faced. I mean, sex is kind of a
Yeah,
healing
tell us a little
force,
bit about like
unacknowledged.
the healing that you have seen happen with this work.
Almost all men's number one desire is for more physical touch, and I don't even mean just sexually.
Right.
Most men don't get hugged and touched as much as women, and that's because of toxic masculinity. It's changing, but I has had men cry because I just scratched their back gently. I have known, and they do this to themselves, because they benefit from being manly and stoic and blah, 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 all the things we know. But yes, I've met a lot of men whose wives don't want to fuck them. Their wives gave them the good stuff for a year and then got the ring. And I've had wives call me and be like, yeah, I faked it and I never even liked him, but I got the house and the kids and I got him and now I'm going to take half. And I was like, you're just a less honest sex worker, honestly. I don't know why some people dislike sex. I've talked to women who say it's painful. There's some stuff going on in menopause with wall thinning and wetness issues. HRT has been a godsend for a lot of aging women. Not all aging women get that. Some aging women are hornier than ever. And so I would argue that some of that might be psychological or just the very natural variance in humans. I don't think we know. We don't talk a lot about menopause. I've met a lot of men whose wives have hit the mid-50s, late 50s, and they just won't fuck them anymore.
They're done. They don't want anything to do with sex anymore.
I would argue a lot of times it's because the wife knows her husband's a cheating fuck and she doesn't want to fuck him anymore because she's mad at him. And,
right.
But then he cheats more because he's like, I'm starving for sex. So it's a problem.
Complicated. Yeah.
Opening marriages, everyone in New York's a swinger now because they realize it's the only way they can survive for 60 years of marriage. And honestly,
Right.
my girlfriends also want to fuck other people. They love their husband, but same food every
Right.
night, all that.
Right.
Or they don't. I know one who she's real mad at her husband. She likes to date other guys, but they got little kids and they don't want to custody and
blow
all
it
that
up. Yeah.
Anyway, the reasons are as diverse as people themselves, but yes, the healing. Look, everyone has a sexual ego. Women do too. Any woman when she feels like she's the throatinator 3000 blowjob goddess, she feels kind of like a badass. Like we all have sexual ego, the compersion. That is very normal and it's not a bad thing. So yes, when men think that they are desired sexually, they get real happy. And that's not that's not something women do too.
Yes.
so-
we all want to feel desired.
Yeah,
Even if we don't desire to have sex, it still feels good when someone
sure.
desires to have sex with you.
For sure. And so they don't get pursued for sex as much. Some of that's mechanical, clits on the outside. The same thing that makes them come isn't typically what makes, 95% of women come. And that's a design flaw. I guess God has a sick sense of humor for putting our junk on the outside. And we know there's G-spot. We know there's all the outliers. But most women, it's the clit, right? And
Right.
most women, the penis doesn't do much for that. So, again, design flaw. I don't know why it was engineered this way. I wasn't in charge. So
Right.
I think a lot of men have this fantasy that their cocks could be as desirable as women's bodies tend to be, especially if we're young and pretty or whatever.
Yeah.
And they don't really get to be chased. Like most men will tell you a story of like the 2 or 3 times in life that they were really pursued by a woman for sex, and they will remember that forever. And most women have 25,000 of those stories and don't remember them.
Yeah, that's not interesting.
Correct. There is a lot of men like sex work because it's the one time they can get laid when they want to, when they're horny, on demand with what they want. The brothel lineup thing, or the internet version of that where they get on sites and kind of go shopping, the illusion of choice, even though it's not really true. Other people have consent and they can't just have everything they're looking at. They still have to be a nice, normal person. You can't
Right.
just, but the illusion of choice is something that not a lot of men ever get to experience. And that's very
Right.
seductive to them. That's why they like strip clubs. They go and it's like, oh, I can be the one selecting for once in my life, right?
Yeah. And the transactional part of it feels safer than having to be in an emotional relationship that could be complicated, that could create more risk. It's a lesser risk, this type of shopping.
They usually want the illusion of emotion. They
Right.
won't think you really like them for more than the money. That probably is just their desire to alleviate guilt. They don't want to think like, she hates me, but she needed money, and so I'm an abuser.
Well, that and I have to pay for sex, which means women won't fuck me. I have to pay for it. Women won't fuck me without it. So
Correct.
a lot of men are trying to manipulate out of that dynamic. There's like a subconscious thing that doesn't like that women wouldn't fuck them unless they pay for it.
Work is work movement is that a lot of men don't want the sex work. They don't even like the term because that implies that they are work, which is make them feel bad.
Right.
I would argue society shaming clients contributes to this. If it was normal for people to sometimes pay for sex on demand, which is a world most people can't even imagine, even where it's legal, it's still stigmatized. You're right. They feel shame for paying for sex because that implies the person doesn't really want them.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I joked once with a client. I was like, I could be mad that if I didn't look like this and I
Right.
didn't suck and fuck, that nobody would date me in civilian dating either. They all want sex on
Right.
Tinder and Match.
Right.
That's what they're there for.
I just think people should have some kinky, like, let's have a kink around paying for sex, and then you can really get off on it and really like. There's so much more positive impact when you can just kink out on it.
Just lead with what you have to offer. I was never mad at the fact that men usually wanted to fuck me. I could be mad about that and be like, oh, if I didn't fuck them, they wouldn't date me. Yeah, that was probably true. They probably wouldn't have. They'd go find one who would, right? But you can be either mad about that or you can lead with what you have to give. And I've known a lot of rich men who are very happy to give women money. One of them,
Right.
and he's like, I love knowing that you have a safe apartment, you have clothes you like, you can take care of your dog. He's like, and also my kink is that it's a flex. I can do more for you than other guys can do, so they can't have you.
Ding, ding, ding. Yes, and it
Interesting.
inspires that protector provider instinct that is
Yeah.
also hardwired in the biology. So I've got one final question. It's possible Willow does too, and this question is, what advice would you give someone who wants to break in to the sex worker space? What would you with your experience, what advice do you have?
Honestly, I would tell them don't, even if you survive it. Like I sort of have. I guess we'll see when it's totally over. But in these sunset years, I could say I've pretty much survived it. Unscathed for sure, but hey, I would say don't. Get digital skills, get a remote job, live all over. It's easier. Honestly, society makes this too hard. Okay, if you were hell-bent on this, a lot of research. There's a million YouTube channels, there's podcasts, there's Instagrams. You could try emailing successful women to help you. All the information's out there. There's books and shows. The bad stuff is incredibly rare. 99% of it's just literally just dating. It's actually pretty boring and fun. And so you will spend a lot of time preparing for something that hopefully will never happen. But for real, if you're hell-bent on this, benchmark those who are out there. There's some great Canadian escorts with YouTube channels that teach you everything because they have legal rights to speak out.
Right.
But honestly, I would say don't.
Okay. Get it. Well, that's advice from Amy Taylor, who has
Yeah.
been through quite a lot. Has been through pretty much all of it.
It's not boring. It's not been boring.
It's
Yeah.
not been boring. Yeah.
And thanks for the work you guys do in the healing space. I don't know, we're not qualified to or equipped to do the extensive coaching and things you guys do with with people's hearts on the inside. We're sort of just the entertainment fun, like a movie. And that's fine. That's a fine thing to do. But I love the work you're doing with people's hearts and souls. That's really great.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Amy,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your experience and being
Yeah.
so candid about it. It was
And
really,
so
really
vulnerable.
delightful to hear.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
Thanks.
Super helpful.
Where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm on Amy Taylor NYC out there. If you guys, some of it's just modeling stuff if you want to, but sometimes my ramblings and thoughts are out there. So say hi if you guys feel like it.
Love
Great.
it.
Great.
Thanks, Amy.
Yeah. Okay, everybody, stay tuned because the dish is up next.
Now, our favorite part, the dish.
Well, that was a fascinating conversation. I mean, so what a story, what a life, what a trajectory she went on, and
Yeah.
all in the name of like seeking security, financial security, and safety, and quite a roller coaster with that.
Yeah, her story's kind of like the nightmare story.
I know that's a rare story.
Yeah, like that's
you
a
don't
thing-
usually hear that kind
Everything
of stuff
that would totally
in
scare you
the
off from
sex working
touching.
industry. Yeah.
Yeah, like kind of the opposite of, when I was sort of moving in towards what I would call the sexual arts. These are things that would have stopped me in my tracks.
Right.
Like the idea of having a potential pimp could destroy your life and smear your name and threaten. I mean, that guy was out to ruin her life, and he did for a while.
Yeah.
Like, that is fucked up.
And never really even met her. Just picked her out of the crowd.
I watched a documentary. I wonder if it's the same guy. I watched a documentary about sex work.
The
There were a couple
erotic
women that got
review
murdered. Yeah.
is a big review site for tantrikas, for
Oh, really?
dakinis. Yeah.
Okay,
It's a
then it's not what
the
I was
erotic
thinking.
review is like a pretty well-known site where a lot of people, whether they're doing full body sensual massage, escort, tantra, or whatever, they want reviews on there. People do who are working because men go and look at that site.
Yeah, it's why I don't ever put myself on sites that are pursuing reviews. Like I think it was Redbook back in the day, which was really big in the Bay Area. Like that's just gross to me. Like I don't want people talking about their sensual experience with me. It feels like such locker room, and the way that they talk about it is very locker room. I don't know. That always threatened me, and so I never pursued that kind of websites.
Yeah, it's very
I
interesting.
don't like that.
Yeah.
And it sounds like she didn't like it either, and didn't.
No, she
want...
never even got into it. Never was a part of it. Just shut it down. Yeah.
I think it's tricky when you promise certain sex acts.
Yeah.
But and not to judge anyone that has formulated their business in such a way. I mean that can work, and it makes it very transparent what someone can expect.
Right.
I just find it puts a lot of, I imagine it put a lot of pressure on your own body.
Yeah, exactly. Because you don't know until you're in the moment what you want to do or not do.
Yeah.
And we both know people who are primarily dakinis doing tantra work, not having, intercourse.
Full service. Yeah, who don't do full service services. Yeah.
Who sometimes are with a client who they really are enjoying, and they do it because they want to in that case, not for an exchange of income.
Yeah. And oftentimes, so there's different, I mean, just for those people who don't know, there are people in the sexual arts. I just like that. Regardless of what you offer, I put it all under that umbrella. And there's some people, especially in, I think, the Tantra world, where full service is less
expected.
Yeah. It's not something that is always offered, though some people do offer it. And when I say full service, that usually means not just touch and arousal with hands. It might include mouths. It might include penetration with, vaginal sex, anal sex, whatever the case may be. And that's a good fit for some people who offer it. Most people don't. In the Tantra space, would be my estimate.
Mm-hmm. And even in dominatrix and BDSM, most people are not. They're more just like playing with sexual energy, playing with erotic edges and levels in ways that are shame-free and judgment-free. There's a lot of there's still so much repression and so much taboo around sexuality that there's parts of our psyche that don't ever get a chance to see the sunshine.
Yeah.
And so in a controlled environment, a transactional environment that has parameters, that has boundaries, that both people understand and know what the boundaries are, it's safer to explore those edges of your psyche. And that's the beauty of it. That's sort of the healing and the becoming more whole within yourself of it all. And it's a tremendous service that people are providing, not just women, but men as well. There's actually a male that I want to get on our show pretty soon here, who does work with all genders and, is doing lots of healing work in the sexuality world and just having so much fun. And I think that there's like, we all grow up in this culture, in this society that like work has to be hard. Work has to be, a lot of work. And there's also jobs out there, careers out there, paths out there that can be a lot of fun and can be a lot of pleasure. And this is one that can be that. And and as, if you're stepping into it, it can bring up a lot of personal stuff as well.
Yeah, it often does. It's rare when it doesn't.
Yeah,
You have
it
to
should.
face, your own fears and shame and conditioning around what sex work is to you.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of people who don't like that word sex work. They don't identify that, even though they're working with people's arousal and shifting their systems with arousal.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of sexuality places that you can explore your healing and your awakening in the sexual realms that you can do so without exposing yourself to STIs. I think that's one big concern that people have is like, how do you keep your body safe and therefore keeping your partner safe if you have relationships outside of your sex work? Those are all things that have to be confronted. I grew up thinking that prostitution was, people who were really suffering and that was their only option. And that's not true. I don't think that's ever been true. That's one section of sex work, but there's a whole nother department of sex work that is completely different from that. These are mentally well, healthy people who are not suffering,
Mhm.
who feel very rewarded
Mhm.
by their work in sexuality and working with people's bodies and shifting
Mhm.
people's systems.
Mhm.
That's what I think the real power of sex work has for folks, whether that's BDSM, whether that's Tantra, whether that's even escort work.
Mhm.
Something deeper is happening when we meet people in our sexuality. And it's interesting. I don't think that's true for everyone. I didn't really get the sense that that was true for Amy.
No.
I sounded like with Amy, she really embraced the entertainment aspect of sexuality. It was interesting and makes sense that it's like this is like dating, but you get paid for it.
Mhm.
And I think when you have the privilege of beauty, which Amy truly
Definitely
has, I mean,
does.
what a
She's
babe,
gorgeous. Yeah.
like, that's someone who'll do really well. Someone who's
Mhm.
not as physically beautiful probably can't get the same kind of dollars that I imagine Amy was able to get.
I
So,
don't know if that's totally true because I know some people in the industry who are not the
typically
typical
attractive.
gorgeous, with the eyes and the lips and the cute little nose, but they are doing really well. So I do think there's personality, there's skill level. Yeah, having good looks and a nice body
Well,
certainly
that's why I
helps.
think going on the teacher track is a
Mhm.
place where when you don't feel as confident about your sexual attraction, whether that's because you have issues with your body image or you don't think you're as classically beautiful,
Mhm.
there's lots of ways to still engage and be very rewarded in this work. I think for me, I certainly felt that way.
Yeah.
I was always a little insecure about what people would think if they when I opened the door.
Mhm.
And so there's ways that you can use education.
Isn't that funny, y'all, that Leah thinks that people would open the door and be dissatisfied with her gorgeousness?
Well, like I
Oh,
remember,
the
like I
things
can
that
take a
we
good
think about
picture.
ourselves,
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
as women. And this is such a, oh, it's so
It's
deeply ingrained
torturing.
and deeply embedded, just,
Totally.
and as we get older into our 40s and 50s and 60s, it's like we're just hanging on to this look and this youth. And I think there's so much beauty in aging. Like, let's
Yeah.
actually allow the aging to unfold before us and step into it with confidence. And there's a wisdom, like what you were saying in the interview, Leah, about like, you wish you'd known then what you know now, like the
Yeah.
knowledge, the experience, the well-seasoned practitioner. There's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, the embracing of one's own erotic nature because you've discovered so much about it, and then we have so much more to explore. So much
Mhm.
more is on the table.
Mhm.
And when you give yourself permission within your own system, that's a mirror for people to give themselves their own permission to sort of explore this part of our humanity. I mean, my God,
Yeah.
when I think about all the stress we endure day to
Yeah.
day, that we have this built-in system in
To
our
clear it
sex.
all. Yeah.
Yeah, to like really embrace these opportunities to flood our system with beautiful hormones
Yes. Bring on the
that give us relief.
oxytocin. Vitamin
Um,
O, everybody. Get
yeah.
some.
So really, really, really interesting story. I can't help but feel like some of it's very tragic. You know, I felt sad when her advice was don't do it.
Yeah.
I did. I felt sad.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, it kind of hit me in a way, you know?
Yeah.
And I think there's just as many different experiences on this path of professionalism as there are on every other path of
True.
professionalism.
They all have their complications.
Yes, and everyone's going to have a different experience. And so I think the most important thing is really like stay true to your own experience. What is it that is feeling like alignment and truth inside of your system, moment to moment? Be able to discern that, be able to keep your finger on the pulse of that, and just listen, and you won't go awry.
We'll also have community.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, there's so many do's and don'ts that I discovered, and I'm so glad I had mentors who I could learn from,
Yeah.
so that I could create and own and really make strong my yeses and my nos.
Yeah.
This is where I'll meet people, and then this is where I'm not available to meet
Right.
people and some of
Right.
their needs. And I
Right.
think having that really curated and knowing you can always change it and evolve it.
Yeah.
But yeah, my advice would be different for people who might be starting out in the sexuality world. And I think part of that is really cultivating, going slow,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But you have to make it your own. It has to feel right.
It has to feel right. And that
right.
includes knowing your value, you know,
Yeah.
and charging what is right for you, even if
Yeah.
it's above and beyond what everyone else is charging.
And you'll make mistakes and you'll learn from that.
Yeah.
And you'll continue to cultivate and hopefully not be discouraged.
Yeah.
There was something else I found really interesting about the conversation is this having a relationship and having the work and how much of a rub that is for so many women in this industry. It's like,
Mhm.
if I have the work, I can't have the relationship. If I have the work, I can't be a mom. You
Mhm.
know, these two opposing things. And one of the last trainings I did, they really sort of explored this relationship between, you know, the wife dynamic archetype and the courtesan and having them have a conversation, you know, having the mother archetype and having a conversation with the whore. Having the modern woman that says this is what you don't do if you want to be a liberated woman, and then the submissive and having a conversation about that inside archetype of the submissive inside your system. And I think it's really worth exploring in the sex space for courtesans and sex workers so that they can really determine what's really blocking them subconsciously. If they have two opposing desires, how can you have it? How can you have both?
Mhm.
And that would be an interesting conversation in sort of a classroom space for people who are wrestling with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that sort of aspecting practice is valuable no matter what your opposing parts
Desires.
of yourself are.
Yeah.
Are struggling with. So
Yeah.
check it out. Try it
Like-
sometime.
Let us know what you think about this conversation and in the comments. And thanks for being such loyal listeners. We love you.
Thanks for tuning in. This episode was hosted by Tantric Sex Master Coach and Positive Psychology Facilitator Leah Piper, as well as by Chinese and Functional Medicine Doctor and Taoist Sexology Teacher Dr. Willow Brown. Don't forget, your comments, likes, subscribes, and suggestions matter. Let's realize this new world together.